Hi, everybody. I'm here today to talk to you about werewolves, or moon puppies, as I like to call them. These are people that transform into wolves, usually during the full moon. It's unclear where or when the legend of werewolves originated, but some people believe that it was the Epic of Gilgamesh, which is an ancient poem that's regarded as one of the earliest surviving great works of literature. Now, in it, Gilgamesh rejects a potential lover because he finds out that she turned her previous mate into a wolf. Now, some people reject this idea offhand because no actual transformation occurs. These people generally believe that the story of Nicaros is probably the first written story of a werewolf. Now, the story of Nicaros is one of several in a series about two travelers. In it, Nicaros is a soldier. He's traveling to a distant city with a companion when they decide to relieve themselves in a graveyard, which is weird in and of itself. So when they're doing this, Nicaros' friend suddenly turns into a wolf, howls, and runs off to a nearby town. Now, Nicaros approaches his friend's clothing on the ground and discovers that it has turned to stone. Confused, he goes to the nearby town to find his friend, and he discovers that this angry wolf entered the town, killed a bunch of animals, and in turn, the townspeople killed the wolf by putting a spear through its neck. So Nicaros is now left with the vision of his friend turning into a wolf and the idea that he was subsequently killed by the townspeople. Now, this story is really interesting because it could be one of these lesson stories about how we should or maybe should not treat graveyards. But it's one theory. There's actually several, but these were two of the ones that I thought were probably most interesting as far as the origin of werewolves. So in the 16th century, there were many alleged werewolf cases, and these were actually caused by serial killers claiming to be werewolves, which is a very fascinating kind of thing that happened around that time, and a lot in France. So there was an interesting case with Pierre Bergot and Michael Verdun in which they were arrested and accused of killing children. Now, they confessed, and in their confessions, they said that they had sworn allegiance to the devil in exchange for an ointment that turned them into werewolves. And they said that when they were werewolves, that's when they committed these crimes that they had committed. Now, I found another story similar about a Giles Garnier, who was also from France, who had something similar happen. He was arrested and accused of killing and eating children. And he confessed. And when he confessed, he also said that he had an enchanted ointment that turned him into a werewolf, and that's why he had committed these atrocities. Now, what was in this ointment? Did this ointment actually exist? We're never really going to know for sure. But if there was an ointment, you might imagine it likely contained some sort of drug or hallucinogen, which was causing these people to believe that they were werewolves. I did find another really interesting story about a potential alleged werewolf. This one's a little bit different. A man by the name of Peter Stubb, or Peter Stump, if you want to Google it. It's very, very interesting stuff. So Peter was known as the Bedburg werewolf. He was a wealthy German farmer in Bedburg, and at the time, there was a potential werewolf that was attacking and killing the citizens of the area. Now, Peter was out for a walk one night and he was cornered and accused of being the werewolf. The people that cornered him said that they had witnessed him transforming, and so they knew that it had to be him. He was taken into custody where he was terribly tortured, and he confessed. And not only did he confess to being a werewolf, but he also confessed to a number of other things, including making a pact with the devil. He said that he had worshipped Satan since he was 10 or 12 years old. He confessed to having relations with many of his relatives, including his daughter. He confessed with having relations to a succubus. And he said that he was able to turn into a werewolf because he owned an enchanted belt, which allowed him to do so. And it was while he was wearing this enchanted belt and turned into a werewolf that he was killing people. Now, it is likely believed that all of the confessions that he made at that time were false and like came about because of the torture that he was enduring. But in any event, he was he was sentenced to death, and he was executed alongside his daughter and his mistress. And his execution is regarded as one of the most brutal of its time. So you can imagine, and I looked into it a little bit, and I had a very difficult time reading the information about how he was executed. It was very, very brutal and really terrible. Um, and it kind of goes to show you like these cases of torture of people being executed for crimes that they possibly didn't commit. Like a killer could have been walking around free while this man was sentenced to death for his crimes because he was tortured into a confession. It's really kind of sad. So let's talk a bit, let's get away from that and talk a bit about the legend of the werewolf. How do you become a werewolf? So it's believed that it's a curse. Now, some people think that you can just end up with the curse on you. Somebody curses you, and so you turn into a werewolf during the full moon. Other people believe that you have to come into possession of an enchanted item, so like a belt or a cloak. Usually, it has part of or an entire wolf pelt attached to it. Um, a lot of the stuff that you see on TVs and in movies circulates around the idea that you become a werewolf from being bit by a werewolf or scratched by a werewolf, and you end up turning into one because of that. In any event, almost all werewolf stories circulate around the full moon. People believe that you turn into a werewolf during the full moon. Now, could this be because people believe that our behaviors change during a full moon? I mean, after all, the word lunatic does come from the goddess Luna, who is the goddess of the moon. So, does our behavior change? At one point, it was believed that the moon had the same effect on the water on our brain as it does on the oceans. And so it caused changes within the water on our brain, which caused behavioral changes. Now, obviously, this isn't true, but it was something that was believed very far back, which means very far back, people believed that the moon somehow affected behavior. So there has been some studies done. A study in Australia stated that 23% of violent and acute behavioral incidents happened during a full moon. They've actually done quite a few studies. However, with all of these studies, no one has been able to show consistently through multiple studies that a full moon has any effect on humans' behavior. So, are we more likely to believe that a full moon is going to change our behavior, and so we do things differently than we normally would? Or are some people actually more sensitive to the energy from the full moon? These are things that you kind of have to think about and maybe decide for yourself, or wait until science can kind of tell us more information about it. Do real werewolves exist? It's highly unlikely. Um, Prior to our current understanding of different medical conditions, people believed that a lot of different illnesses and ailments were caused by people being werewolves. Some of these were lycanthropy, hypertrichosis, rabies, and even food poisoning was believed to be caused by a person being a werewolf. People also took hallucinogens at the time and believed that they turned into werewolves while they were hallucinating. And this kind of contributed to what is referred to as werewolf mania. So, medical science now shows a lot of these things were not caused by people being werewolves, but were caused by actual medical issues or different conditions. There was a little boy, he was called Peter the Wild Boy. He was a young boy, and he was found wandering the woods, naked on all fours. He ate with his hands, and he was not really able to speak. He ended up being taken in by the courts of King George I and King George II, where he was kept as a pet. It's now believed that Peter likely had what is called Pitt-Hopkins syndrome, a condition that causes a lack of speech, seizures, intellectual challenges, and many other things. So this poor boy was suffering from medical conditions, and because the people at the time didn't have the medical understanding to be able to help him, they ended up keeping him as a pet for entertainment, which kind of to me speaks volumes about humans. So while traditional werewolves may not exist, I think that history kind of shows us the capability of humans to become monsters sometimes, full moon or not, which is sad. So let's work on practicing a little bit of extra kindness and not become werewolves ourselves, okay? So that's kind of all the information that I have right now on werewolves. I found it really interesting to do the research on this. I really like learning about our understanding of history and things that have happened, and how our knowledge or lack of knowledge has impacted how we treat things. So this was a good one, and I'm super glad I did it. But that's that for now, I guess. So thanks for watching. I'll see you guys on another day with another video about something totally different. Everybody stay safe, and happy holidays. Okay, bye.